Hey guys, some of you might have seen a video we made recently talking about cameras, the use of cameras in Japan, and it was for our Myths About Japan playlist, and it was addressing the common myth that it's illegal to use cameras in public places or take photos of people in public places in Japan. But it is a myth, it's not correct. However, we also pointed out a couple of exceptions. One was on private property, cameras are often they often ask you don't use cameras, and also the use of concealed cameras to video people or take photos of people is against the law in Japan. However, the last week or so, there's been lots of talk in the media in Japan about a recent change in the Gion District of Kyoto, where they've recently banned the use of cameras in that district. And it's pretty amazing because that Kyoto is obviously one of the central parts of the tourism industry in Japan. It's one of the most popular tourism destinations in Japan, and the Gion District is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Kyoto. So they have huge numbers of tourists. If anyone who's visited Kyoto will know that just about everybody you see in Kyoto is a tourist. Or works somehow related to the tourism industry. It's just huge in those older areas like the Gion area. So the reason that they've done it is it's been an ongoing problem for a long time. In that area, it's very traditional. So lots of you guys would have seen those classic photos of Japan with the old streets and the old buildings and the geisha or the maiko in their makeup and their hair and their kimono and getter and things. And it's a classic image of Japan, isn't it? You know, if you searched traditional Japan on the internet, that's probably one of the first images you'd get, isn't it? So that area, and for that reason, that area of Kyoto is very popular. However, a lot of those people that are doing that, a lot of those ladies that are doing that are genuine geisha who are going through the geisha thing, who are going through the geisha training and going through the maiko, going through the geisha training and becoming, fully fledged geisha. It's a traditional Japanese thing. And although it is very attractive to the tourists, a lot of them aren't doing it for that reason. And also, as we were talking about recently with the idol thing, those that are doing it in reaction to the tourists or as part of tourism get paid for it. And so the tourists have to go to a place and pay money to go and have the Geisha experience. And what's been happening for years, many, forever probably, since cameras were invented, is that when Maiko or Geisha leave their house or leave their place and go outside, the tourists just swarm them. And those of you who have been to Kyoto would have seen this. If a geisha or a maiko appears in one of those streets, they just get swarmed by tourists because it's an amazing scene. Here you are in this amazing little old street, hundreds of years old, surrounded by all these old buildings, and suddenly there's a geisha standing there. Everybody, all the tourists just turn around with their camera and take a photo. And of course they swarm around like paparazzi, and because the geisha and the maiko are trying to go somewhere and they can't go anywhere. And so it's been an ongoing problem for years. So their solution to it is to ban the use of cameras in that district. And it's just, this is the sort of thing we've been talking about in relation to the 2020 Olympics. This is the sort of thing that you're going to hear about during the 2020 Olympics. That Japan's going to be full of journalists, and they're going to be reporting on the Olympics, but they're going to have free time or extra time to report on local stories, right? They always do that, don't they, the journalists? You always get that little story at the end of the news, Just before we go, a little short story from Japan, quick story from Japan. And anything like this is going to be jumped on, It might work. The problem is that the people that make the decisions, the actual decision was made by the Gion Association, the local district association. Now legally, what they've said, they've put up posters and signs, and they've said that use of cameras in this area or on this private road is banned, and there's a 10,000 yen fine, which is about $100 fine. So legally, possibly because that area is controlled by them and they're saying it's private road, that they're saying that they can stop the use of cameras. So perhaps legally they can. And of course, as far as Japanese tourists are concerned, if they have signs up saying no cameras, most Japanese people won't use a camera. And then if someone pulls a camera out, a Japanese person pulls a camera out, and someone holds up a sign, some local volunteer worker holds up a sign that has no cameras written on it, most Japanese people would probably put their camera away. We talked about that recently in that video about cameras, was the mana. And if you tell Japanese people what the mana is and say, okay, in this area the mana is that people aren't allowed to use cameras, most Japanese people will go, okay, and then they won't take out their camera. There might be a couple that might, but the majority won't, or their smartphone. Most people use smartphones now rather than cameras, don't they? Which is going to make it hard again, because they might have taken out their camera, their smartphone, to look at the message their friend just sent them. You don't know they're about to take a photo, do you? So you might be able to ask the Japanese people not to do it, and they might not do it. However, the majority of the tourism in Kyoto is foreigners, right? And on the signs that we saw on the internet, they had Chinese, they had Japanese and Chinese and some English, and that was it. Which means they did have pictures with a line through them of don't use the camera, but as far as policing it, as far as enforcing it, it might be legal. Probably they worked out a way to make it a legal thing, that they can stop you. But logistically, how are they going to do it? There's tourists walking around that district from 7 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, every day, tens of thousands of them, and they're tourists. They've all got their phones and their smartphones. They have their smartphones and their cameras and things out, and they're tourists. They're on holidays. How are they going to stop them doing it? You can just imagine. It'll be impossible. It will be impossible. It doesn't matter how many signs they put up saying no cameras, or how many volunteers. They'll need lots of little old men with signs saying no cameras, walking around holding them up in front of everybody, and it'll just be endless. Those guys will be just running from group of people to group of people. Imagine those of you who've been to Kyoto know that they have car parks full of buses, and buses pull up and 80 people get out, and a tour guide with a flag walks through, and no doubt the tour guide will say in this area cameras and phones are banned, but 80 people walk through and suddenly a geisha appears, or a mako appears. They're all going to start taking photos, aren't they? And you're going to have some little man running around with a sign saying no photos, no photos, no photos, no photos. It's just going to be a losing battle, and they say on the poster it says there's a 10,000 yen fine, there's a $100 fine for using a camera in that area. Imagine trying to enforce that. What are you going to do? You go up to a bunch of Chinese tourists, or a bunch of European tourists, or a bunch of any tourists, and 20 of them are taking photos of a mate. What are you going to do? Okay, you all owe us $100. You all have to pay us $100. And they say, we're not paying it, and they walk away. What are you going to do? You're going to call the police and have people put in headlocks and dragged away. You'd be doing that all day, every day. They would need hundreds of cops just standing there all day, arresting people and taking them away for using their phones and their cameras. And then that's the other thing, the phone camera thing. That's got them, because what do? People hold up their phone and they're sending a message to their friend. And a little old man comes over with a sign, sumimasen, dame, and the person answers in German or Spanish or Turkish or Portuguese or some other language and says, I'm just sending a message to my friend. That's the end of the discussion, isn't it? The little old man's not going to be taking the phone and checking if there's a photo on there. And not wanting to sound, look, no doubt, not wanting to put this the wrong way. Obviously, being realistic, there are a high percentage of people, and we know this from the people who watch our videos, there's a high percentage of people from all around the world, from all countries around the world, who, if you tell them what the local mana is, they will respect it. So there's no doubt that if you tell, there'll be lots of people that if you tell them, you know, you're not allowed to use your cameras around here, they just won't. And they won't try and be sneaky about it or anything, they just won't use their cameras or their phones. No doubt. But we all know, don't we, there's a huge percentage, they're on holidays. You know, people on holidays, telling people this is a tourist area, come and see this amazing street with these amazing old houses and, you know, all that stuff. Because they haven't just banned the taking of photos of the geisha and the Mako, they've banned the taking of photos at all in that district. Which, no doubt, there'll be a percentage of people who will say, okay, no problem, and they'll still go there anyway, and they'll just look at the scenery and say, isn't that amazing? What a shame we can't take a photo. And then they'll leave and they'll say it was a great visit and they enjoyed it. There'll be another percentage of people who won't go, right? Because we know there's a lot of people, you know, this is the Instagram age. There'll be a lot of people, if they can't Instagram their photos of their day, they won't go. And that's sort of understandable too. If you go to an amazing place like that and you can't take a photographic record of it, you know, it really is a beautiful place. It's an amazing place. And if you go there and can't take photos of it, what are you going to do? You go buy a postcard or something, possibly. The sales of postcards should increase. But it's just, I don't know, it's just, and then there'll be that other percentage who are just going to go there and say this is amazing and just pull out their camera and their phone and start taking photos. And crowd behaviour, you know, we've all seen crowd behaviour. What happens is if one person takes out their phone and starts taking their camera and starts taking photos, the other people around them will, some other people around them will too. And then suddenly you've got this street with 1,000 people, not exaggerating, that's what it's like during the day in good weather. There'll be 1,000 people in one little street, and suddenly 100 of them are taking photos. And the little men are going to be running around with their signs, their green vests, volunteers, little old men, volunteers with little signs saying no cameras, running around going no cameras, no cameras, no cameras. They're not going to stop it. It's just irrational. It's irrational, impractical. The old guys who make the decisions about this sort of stuff in Japan just really usually have no idea about how the rest of the world works, you know, and how people who aren't Japanese behave. They've got no idea. Obviously, if they did, they wouldn't even try this. There has to be other solutions to this problem of you know, the geishas and the Mako experiencing. There has to be other solutions. This isn't it. Obviously, it's not going to work. You know, we anticipate what's going to happen is they're going to have lots of problems. They're not going to be able to enforce it. You know, the police aren't going to be. Imagine the bad PR if they went up to foreigners and said, you just took a photo, there's a $100 fine, you have to pay a $100 fine, and the tourist said, I'm not paying that. What are they going to do? They're going to start arresting tourists and taking them to jail for not paying a $100 fine because they took a photo. Are they really going to do that? Can you imagine what that would look like to the world's media? What that would do to the PR of the tourism industry in Japan? Just terrible, just a disaster, isn't it? And I can hear people saying, it's Japan, they can make whatever rules they want to. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely they can. But their goal, they're really pushing, the Japanese government at all levels is pushing for more tourism, is what they want. They want more tourism in Japan. We've got 2020 Olympics coming next year. Already people are watching what's going on here. How's their timing? How's their timing? Right in the middle of trying to build up the tourism industry and build up for the 2020 Olympics. One of their best tourism sites in Japan, they ban the use of cameras. Really? They ban photos and videos. It's not going to happen. My prediction is before the Tokyo Olympics, probably before the end of the year. It just won't work. The first few days, it's only this month they're bringing this in. And my prediction is that within a week they'll know it's not going to work, because they're going to have dozens of little old men, volunteers running around with signs, and they might even have a couple of police there too, and it just won't work. You know, there'll be hundreds of people a day that are going to break their rule and take photos. What are they going to do? They can't arrest them, you know, they just can't. They possibly legally could, But the consequences are going to be huge if they do. Bad PR, isn't it? So my prediction is that the next we hear about this is going to be dramas, because there'll be a bunch of foreigners who are just going to say no, I'm not paying you $100 fine for taking a photo. No, and there'll be dramas, and there'll be confrontation and bad PR, and it possibly before they remove the ban, it'll get picked up by the international press, and it'll start getting reported around the world that in the build up to the see this one hiding from the sun. In the build up to the 2020 Olympics, Kyoto, one of Japan's most popular tourism destinations, has banned the use of cameras. And because there'll be stuff coming up for our myths playlist too, because it's going to happen. The media never get these stories right. They pick a little bit up from here, a little bit up from here. They don't quite understand something, they write something different, and all of a sudden you're going to get some really bizarre stories. Possibly one of the biggest mistakes they'll make is to say that Kyoto has banned photos, which would kill the tourism industry in Kyoto. Imagine that. Imagine if you were planning to come to Japan for a holiday, and you want to go to Tokyo, and you want to go to Kyoto, and you want to go to somewhere else, and then suddenly you hear that you're not allowed to use cameras in Kyoto. There'd be a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm not going there," then, wouldn't there? For sure. It's just not going to happen. So what will happen? What will happen is they'll try it. It'll fail. There'll be lots of dramas and bad publicity and all sorts of hassle generated by it, and then they'll give up on it. They'll give up on it. All the signs will disappear. The ban will be lifted, and they'll find some other solution to the problem that they've got with there'll be another solution. They have to find. I mean, you'd be better off in some parts of the place just banning tourists from some parts of the place, from some parts of that district. That if in this area there's a lot of geisha and maiko that we don't want in the public eye, we'll just close off those streets. That would be more practical, and that would be possible. That only the local residents are allowed in this street and that street and that street. That'd be reasonable. That'd be more doable, because this plan's going to fail. And anybody who's watching this who's been to Kyoto and been to the Gion District would know that it's thousands and thousands of people. It's really busy. It's full on, thousands and thousands of people all day, every day, and Japanese people too, and foreigners too, and it's just full on bus loads. The buses can't get down the little streets. They have big car parks, and the buses all go to these big car parks and unload hundreds and hundreds of people, and then all these people come down the street following tour guides with a little flag. Just huge, and it really is sort of shoulder to shoulder when you're trying to get down some of those little streets. Everyone's sort of pushing past each other, and it's like a sea of people. It's full on. It's absolutely full on, often. And those of you who've been there and seen it can imagine that scene. Imagine that scene when suddenly someone's taking a photo, and someone else is taking a photo, and someone else is taking a photo, and suddenly you've got 100 people spread throughout the crowd taking photos, and you've got little men in green vests with little signs saying no photos, running around holding up signs in front of people. It's just not going to work. People are going to think, oh, that's an amazing scene. I need to get a photo of that so I can remember it. And they'll pull out their camera or their phone, and they'll take one photo, and then they'll put the camera away. And the little man will come running up, and they'll go, yeah, okay. And they've already taken their photo, haven't they? It's just any way you look at it, any way you think about it, it's just irrational. It's not going to work, is it? So, yeah, this is the sort of stuff, we've been talking about this with the 2020 Olympics coming up. This is the sort of stuff that you're going to see while the 2020 Olympics is on, where these little groups of old men sit around a table and they have to solve a problem. And this will be this, they'll come up with solutions like this. And we've showed you that before, haven't we? Funny solutions to problems. And this is a classic example of that, where as soon as you hear it, it's like, no, it's not going to work. It was on television, it was on NHK or somewhere. and they're talking about the problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. You know, the Mako and the Geisha, and they're showing images of all the foreigners, all the tourists, all circling around the Geisha, and the Geisha trying to walk through, and they couldn't get through, and they're taking photos, and so desu ne, so desu ne. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. And then they, and they've banned. They're going to ban. They're going to. At that stage, they hadn't done it yet. They're going to ban the, photography in that area. And nobody stood up and said, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work. There's no way in the world. So anyway, there it is. What'll happen, I got this real clear image in my head. The little men will be running around with their signs, right? And they'll dread a geisha or a Mako appearing, because the whole idea is to stop them getting hassled. But what's going to happen is, one of them's going to appear, and it's going to be too much for the tourists, isn't it? It's going to be too much. There's going to be 80 Chinese tourists from one bus, and 80 other tourists from another bus, and all these other random tourists, and suddenly a geisha's going to appear in the middle of one of those beautiful little streets, with the beautiful houses on both sides, and they're going to look at it, and it's like a postcard. It's like, wow, look at that. And they're all going to pull out their phones and cameras and automatically and just take a photo. And the little men are going to be running around with their signs, dame, 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 doing the cross arm thing, dame, dame, dame. It's not going to solve the problem. It's just not going to work. So, anyway, when we do hear more about it, which we will, when we do hear more about it, we'll let you know what we hear. We'll let you know what we see. So, funny ones they are. So anyway, there it was. Don't be taking photos in Gion District of Kyoto. More videos coming soon.